cannot be zero, because people always move from one job to another. So, when there is no recession, the cyclical unemployment will be zero, and we are left with what? Fractional and structural, and that is called the natural rate of unemployment. Another name is what? Full employment and employment. And when we have full employment and employment, the economy is at the potential level. It's like being on the production possibility. We are producing what? The maximum possible income. That's basically. Okay. So then we have okay, then we talked about this natural rate of unemployment, roughly 3.5 to 4.5%. Okay, it doesn't change all the time, but it can change over time. Right? Over time it can change because of demographic changes. We say when the economy has young population, right? What do we know about the young population? Young population moves from one job to another, right? So fractional unemployment rate in that case will be higher, and therefore the natural rate of unemployment will also be what? Higher. And then what? Changes in the job search method. Right? Before, people used to go what? Job placement offices and see any job opening or go from office to office, right? But today people sit at home or at coffee shop and then what? On internet, right? Look at what jobs are available, you apply and so on. So that sort of reduces the search time because their computer matches people with their qualification, with their what? Jobs. So it becomes easier for people to get a job and for businesses to get what? Qualified workers. So that lowers the fractional unemployment and therefore the natural rate of unemployment. And the last one says public policy. What if the government is, say, paying high unemployment benefit for a long time, like the unemployment benefit for a long time? What happens? Do people take a job quickly or they wait?
They wait.
Pay your 75% of your salary for a long time. What do many people do? Do they stay or they get another job?
They get another job.
They wait. Right? Because they're getting government money and employment benefit for a long time, right? Attractive unemployment benefit. Some people will choose to what? Stay long until they exhaust this unemployment benefit. So that is going to increase the natural rate of unemployment. Then GDP gap. The GDP gap is simply the difference between actual unemployment and actual output minus the potential output. Here, GDP gap is equal to actual output minus potential output. Okay, it can be positive or it can be negative. This is actual real GDP and the potential real GDP, right? Actual output minus the potential output. It can be positive or negative, right? It can be positive or negative. When is it positive? When the actual output is greater than, okay, when the actual output is greater than the potential, then the GDP gap is positive. When is it negative? It is negative when the actual output is less than the potential, right? In other words, when there is a recession, there is a negative GDP gap. producing less than it is potential, there is a negative GDP gap. Negative GDP gap. This will take us to what is called Ocker's law. Says actual minus potential equal to negative actual unemployment rate. Actual unemployment rate minus the natural rate of unemployment. Okay. Ocker's law basically says the GDP gap is equal to negative 2 times actual unemployment minus the natural. Suppose the actual unemployment rate, let us say, is 4%. Okay, suppose the actual unemployment rate is 4%. And the natural rate of unemployment, let us say, is 5%. 4 minus 5 is what? 4 minus 5 is?
-1.
Okay, 4 minus 5 is -1. -2 times -1 will give you 2. In other words, this says if the actual is less than the natural rate, means the actual output will be greater than the potential by what? By 2% in this case. On the other hand, let's say you have this actual minus the potential is simply 6. Cyclical or let's say here we have -2, the actual unemployment rate, let's say, is 5%, and the natural rate of unemployment, let's say, is 2%. Okay, 5 minus 2 will give us 7. 7 times 2 will give us what? -6, which means when the actual unemployment rate is greater than the natural rate, in that case it means there is a cyclical unemployment. In that case, what happens? The actual output will be less than the potential by 6%. That's basically what the Ocker's law is. Just relates the relationship between output and unemployment rate. Here it is, right? Here it is. It says Ocker's law. Okay, for every 1% of cyclical unemployment, what happens? It creates a negative 2% GDP gap. It creates negative 2% GDP gap. Cyclical unemployment is actual unemployment minus what? Minus the natural rate of unemployment. But for every 1%, then the actual GDP will be less than the potential by 2%. That's basically what the Ocker's law is. Okay, with that, we look at the costs of unemployment. Costs of unemployment. Okay, if there is unemployment rate, what is the cost? Right? Why should we worry? First of all, there is economic cost. The economic cost is when there is unemployment, it means people are not working. What will happen to GDP in that case? Up or down? People are not working, right? They are not working means they are not producing. What will happen to the real GDP? Up and down? Down. So the economic cost of unemployment is lost output, right? And because people are not working, real GDP will be down, right? Lost output is the economic cost of unemployment. Right? Economy as a whole will lose when there is unemployment because what? Real GDP is down. People are not producing goods and services, right? That is the economic cost. Then we have non-economic costs, right? These are the non-economic costs. These are mostly something you know already, right? When there is unemployment, when people are unemployed, what happens? The first one, loss of skills and loss of what? Self-respect. And people are unemployed for a long period of time, what will happen to their skill? That skill, they are not using it, right? It will deteriorate, right? If you don't use your skill for a long time, which means that skill is going to deteriorate, and that also leads to loss of self-respect. And then what? Plummeting morale, right? People are not working, the morale of the unemployment will go down. Right? These are just non-economic costs, right? What is family disintegration? When there is unemployment in the family, both husband and wife losing, or one member's money is not enough to cover the expenses, that sort of what creates friction in the family, right? So that could lead to family disintegration. And what will happen to poverty? People are not working, income is low. What will happen to the poverty? Poverty will increase. Yeah? These are something that you already know. And then what? Heightened racial and ethnic tensions. When unemployment rate is high, right? Then that also creates tension between different races and all that. Immigration issues, racial issues, all these type of problems are created when there is high unemployment. When the economy is doing good, everybody is working and getting income, in that case, people are okay, right? They don't really mind of immigration issues or racial issues and things like that. But when there is high unemployment, that creates friction, right? Ethnic and racial tension. And then we have what? People unemployed, some people who are unemployed, they lose hope, and then they have to lead to what? Suicide, homicide, heart attack, and things. These are all non-economic issues, right? Can lead to violent social and political change. This may not be the case here in the United States, but we have seen this in several other countries in the Middle East. For example, several governments were changing because of high unemployment in the society. Social and political. Okay, these are non-economic costs of unemployment. Okay, what is the economic cost of unemployment? What is the economic cost of unemployment? Economic cost of unemployment is what? I just said a while ago, what was it? What is the economic cost of unemployment? Reduced output, loss of output, right? Economic cost is loss of output. Non-economic cost is this. Okay. So now we move from unemployment, which is an important macroeconomic issue, to another macroeconomic issue, which is inflation, right? Which is inflation. Macroeconomic issue. Those are the two important macroeconomic issues. So let me just leave you here. Says general rise in the price level, inflation reduces the purchasing power of many because of inflation that we have. For example, what we see? We see the costs of goods and services are what? Increasing, right? You go to the market, you want to buy beef price is up. You go to the department, clothes prices up. So the general price increase, right? Now let me give you here one general thing and then we will come on. See here. First of all, we define inflation as an increase in the general price level. Increase in the general price level. It's not one item, two items, but what? The price of most items, right? Most items are going up. You go grocery, you go to department store, you go electronic stores, whatever stores you go, you see prices are what? Rising. That's basically what we have, what we call inflation. To calculate inflation, we know, price index. Remember that? Price index, the general, the real GDP price index, GDP deflator. But this one is also a price index, but the same concept, right? But slightly different. In this case, we have what we call a selected I think I mentioned this also before, selected market basket. The selected market basket. In other words, these are the goods and services that urban people buy. What do we buy? We buy car, we buy food, we buy clothes, we buy gas. Just think of what consumers are buying. Do we buy airplane? Consumers? No. Do we buy tractors? No. Those are included in the GDP deflator, the one we talked about in chapter 7, right? But here those are excluded because we don't buy those for consumption purposes. Yeah? This is typically the goods and services purchased by urban residents. But we also buy not only US produced goods, but we also buy what? Goods produced abroad, imports. Right? So this includes import, but excludes intermediary goods, goods that are used for the production of goods and services. So we have the Consumer Price Index, which is constructed by using this Consumer Price Index, CPI, Consumer Price Index. Right? This is just the average price of goods and services that we buy, that urban residents buy. Consumer Price Index, CPI. And we define CPI, okay, we say CPI is equal to, okay, inflation is equal to CPI, let's say, Consumer Price Index. You can say this period minus CPI last period divided by CPI last period times 100. CPI this period minus last period divided by this period. In other words, this is simply, you can say this is the growth rate. Okay, this is the growth rate of CPI. You know the growth rate is a percentage change. You know that, right? Percentage change of CPI. CPI is growing, and then that means that there is an inflation. Let me give you an example here. Let's say we have here October 2021, and then October 2020, and we have the CPI. The average price in 2021, let's say, was 276.6, and October 20 was 263.4. Since this is an index, 276.6 is simply telling us prices this period in 2021 was what? 176.6% higher than the base year. Okay? And the base year is used as 1982-84. It's used as a base in the average. Now, October 2020 also say what? 260.4, which means that prices in this period were what? 160.4% higher than what? The base year, right? We have been using, we did this before. I'm sure now it clicks in your mind how we calculate that and how we define it. Right? Now we have October 2021, 276. Just I'm doing, just think of what does this mean, right? And what does that mean? That's it. But now we calculate inflation, right? Okay. Inflation is equal to, you take the last period, this 2021, right? Okay. This period is 276.6 minus what? Last period, which is 260.4 divided by what? Last period, which is 260.4 times what? Times 100. Okay? times 100. That's going to be 16.2 divided by 260.4 times 100. That is going to give you 6.2%. In other words, between October 2021 and October 2020, consumer price index rose by how much? By 6.2%. In other words, inflation was 6.2%. You see what I'm saying? Okay, this period minus last period divided by last period times 100. You calculate, you get this. Okay. When you calculate this, what you're going to get is 0.062. That's what you're going to get. So in percent, you just go to this 6.2%. So inflation between 2021 and 2020 was how much? 6.2%. Okay, let me give you one example here. You do this thing yourself. Okay, let's say, take a piece of paper. Let's say we have March 2018 and March 2019. Remember, 2019 is recent than 2018, so this period is going to be 2019, right? So we have the CPI, Consumer Price Index, for this period was 249.6, and for this period, 252.8. So the last period is here, 2019, right? So we say what? CPI 2019 minus what? CPI 2018 divided by CPI 2018 times 100. You see what I'm saying? Let me put it here. You look here, this is October 21, this is October 2020, right? Which one is the recent, more recent? 2021. So you say this period minus last period divided by last period times 100. Okay. Or let me make it easy for you. Let's say here, March 2019 was 252.8. March 2018, 249.6. Okay. What was the inflation between 2018 and so you see here, right? This period minus last period divided by last period times 100, right? It's a percentage change from one period to another, right? Percentage change, growth rate, right? So, what is the percentage change between 252.8 and 249.8? That's basically what it is, right? The growth rate, right? So, this period minus this period divided by this period times 100. If you don't have the calculator or anything, just put the formula you use. That will be enough. If you have your calculator, your phone, you can do the calculation. Is this clear though, or you want me to go over it again? Is that clear? It's just a percentage change from one period to another, right? The growth rate. What was the growth rate of consumer price index